premonitory dreams, and memories of the future. I welcome you, and hope you are well. Za'el here. Thank you for coming in to listen to me. In the early days of this channel, I started talking about a subject that, as I see it, is fundamental to understanding how the universe, manifestation, ideas, consciousness works, being that it is all really part of the same thing, or rather, the same thing itself. That factor, or that subject, is time. I recommend watching the related videos for a better understanding of what I will now discuss. I will screen the first in that series of videos. Many people, myself included, discover in themselves the ability, so to speak, to experience in their sleep a scene, or a context, that they later see reflected in the reality they experience while awake. Sometimes immediately that same day. Sometimes a few days or weeks later. And on other occasions, they may see how things gradually align over the months, or even years, to coincide with the situation they dreamt about long ago. These dreams usually have a particularity, and that is that they attract a lot of attention from those who experience them. They have a different aura to most of the other dreams, and they remain engraved in oneself, sometimes installing fears or even traumas in those who have had them, or on the other hand, an intense happiness and immense desire that one day they will be fulfilled. They attract the attention of those who experience them so much that they often feel the urge to immortalize them as soon as possible, either by writing them down, recording them, or telling them in detail to someone else. And those who know they possess this quality sometimes develop a certain paranoia or special attention towards particularly complete, coherent and striking dreams, thinking that perhaps they could be a warning or prediction of what could happen in the future if they continue along this path. But why does such a phenomenon exist, and what is the reason for it? Well, dreams are, as you may well know, a perfect and quick manifestation of what lives most in our unconscious. A pure representation, although sometimes metaphorical, of those things that most concern those who have them, or those things they long for the most. Therefore, it is very logical to think that, sooner or later, these things end up manifesting themselves in the subject's life, whether or not they have these dreams. This is also why most dreams that end up being premonitory tend to be negative, since fear provokes a particularly strong creative attention. And the reasons why some of these things are inside the subject's unconscious can only be known by the subject himself. Although they are, of course, usually a conglomerate of ideas developed in the unconscious as a result of experiences that have occurred in his life, both the present and earlier and later ones, as well as in what you might call between lives. Everything is closely related in a poetic, beautiful, and sometimes even ironic way. So what I have just said would explain this phenomenon in a linear way. In short, your experiences and the ideas you develop based on them settle in your unconscious, which is represented in some dreams like these. Later, with sufficient attention to them, they become part of the reality that surrounds the waking individual. That is to say that, at the same time, it is the attention to the dream itself that would end up manifesting it or bringing it into that other reality. Note that I avoid differentiating between dream and reality and treat them simply as distinct realities, because that is what they are. In fact, on those planes where you exist in your sleep, everything manifests much more quickly, and this may, in fact, be a good explanation as to why you experienced it first on those planes. And at the same time, having experienced it on those planes, if you are able to remember it when you wake up, is also part of your life experience, which makes it all part of the same reality or the same existential plane, with a consciousness that simply plays at differentiating between one and the other, but all part of the same thing. You could also interpret it from the point of view of having lived a situation, or outcome belonging to a timeline not necessarily the same as the one you may live when you wake up, and take it as a warning or compass that indicates where your unconscious ideas are going to work on them, or reinforce them, depending on what you want to experience in your life. Once again, you are the one who plays at living and experiencing what you want to experience. And I say that, actually, this is linear thinking if we look at it from the point of view that unconscious ideas lead to the dream, which reinforces the attention to those ideas by remembering them, which ends up causing the manifestation of those ideas in the reality that you live in as the real world. Although I don't like to call it that. But just so you understand me. However, as I explained in the example above regarding past and future lives, and also in the videos on time, everything is affected in cause and effect mode both forwards and backwards, or in all possible directions, thus shifting back and forth between effect and cause depending on where you analyze a situation from. In fact, the mere fact of taking these dreams as a warning of where you are going is in itself analyzing from non-linearity, since the future, or one of those futures, influences your present by knowing it, which could end up provoking a new outcome. Also, from the point of view of the soul agreements that you yourself decide, there is already a development or story written for you, which must happen in the way you plan. That very way may be to bring your attention to precisely what is necessary to manifest that outcome. And the way to bring your attention to that could well be one of those dreams, which we would eventually call a premonitory dream. Then it would have been the outcome itself that influenced your present to happen. From this point of view, premonitory dreams would indeed exist. But as we have already discussed in other videos about time and agreements, everything is perspective, and I am not in favor of putting this view of things above, since it makes people enter into a deterministic mentality, even if it is of themselves, in which they believe they cannot control their destiny. Worry about aspiring to manifest what you desire in your present and future, and when you revisit the afterlife you will have time to realize that you lived just what you had planned. Now, knowing that now is all that exists, write that same plan. Now, knowing that past, present and future exist at the same time and affect each other, I would also apply all of the above to what we can call memories. By memory, we mean that experience which we can replay in our mind, or which comes to our mind without seeking it sometimes, and which we assign to a past time in our life, or even in other lives prior to the present one. As I explained on another occasion, you lived everything that made you the way you are, because if not, you would not have been the way you are. And you are the way you are because you have lived everything that made you get here. What is the past? What is the future? There is none. Everything is a story captured in a book that already exists, and whose pages, at the same time and yet, are being written now. So, if you remember a life, does that make it a past experience? Even thinking from the linearity of temporal perception of a soul, Atma, Katra, point of attention, consciousness, or however you understand it, what stops you from living first the higher, more conscious experience, then a denser one, and then returning to something better, one being reminiscent of the other, and yet coming linearly before those from the perception of that Atma? And really, what is the purpose of finding a linearity in them? From my perspective, today you are already everything, and you have access to all those versions of yourself that acquire in their experience all those different experiences and knowledge, sometimes necessarily expressed in a different or seemingly more limited way than another version of you, but still there, shining, wanting to come out and generating a beautiful expression of who you are, sometimes without you even realizing it. As I said, sometimes things manifest over what we call time in a poetic way, which we mostly notice as you become aware of certain other things, mostly on higher planes or in between life. Time is not only plastic. It is not only non-linear. Not only does it exist in the present, past, and future, it also expresses itself throughout itself and affects itself in all its stages. Because in itself, it is you. Your story. See you soon. Za'el of Error.